What's up, everybody? Welcome to the State of Wild, episode 41, a regular podcast, YouTube video, web series thing. My name is Meowth, and as usual, I am joined by Corbettgames. Corbett, how are you doing tonight, dude?
Doing pretty well. Had a nice weekend. Rolled ankle, but apart from that, not doing too badly. How are you?
Doing pretty well. I got my second dose a couple days ago, and I'm feeling better now, of the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
So I am ready to wait my week and then go out and actually be a functioning member of society again. It's going to be nice.
Yeah, and ladies and gentlemen, this episode is sponsored by Windows. So make sure you buy as much Windows content, stock, and everything and product as you can. Thanks, Meowth, for the heads up on that.
Yeah, hashtag ad, right? Sellout.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we've got some stuff to talk about today. We had Nerfs coming this week. But before we get into all of that, just a reminder to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you guys enjoy our content. It does support us a ton. So yeah, let's go ahead and dive right on in. Let's talk about the WoW metagame. We got some Nerfs on Monday or Tuesday. It's been such a long week already. I think we got a Tuesday. So we hit Deck of Lunacy, Sword of Fallen, Jandice, 2-mana Watch Post, 3-mana Watch Post, and Penflinger. So we're going to talk about the 4 that kind of matter for Wild. So let's go ahead and talk about Sword of the Fallen. So Sword of the Fallen going from 3 durability to 2. Jandice going from 6 mana to 5. Far Watch Post going from a 2-4 to a 2-3. And Penflinger going to only being able to hit minions. So first of all, before we dive into any of that, just a reminder to dust these guys for full refund if you need the dust. And because the Watch Posts were affected, you also can dust Kargal, the 7-mana 5/5 Watch Post legendary guy, for full dust as well. So free dust for everybody. Make sure you cash in if you need the dust.
I think it's the second time they've done this where they've nerfed something very indirectly and they've offered the full refund. The first one was for Glinda, when they changed how Echo worked, and then they offered a full refund on Glinda. So
yeah,
it's a very nice thing, right? If they make a habit of this, if like side cards that are highly affected, if they start offering refunds like this consistently, that would be great.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I don't necessarily agree with how they butchered our Watch Post baby, but let's get into that. So let's talk about 2-mana Watch Post going to 2-3. We mentioned this last week. And it was kind of confirmed, by playing some Hearthstone this week, that a 2-3 Watch Post is 10 times worse than a 2-4 Watch Post, and it's very, 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 very sad.
Yeah, the 3 health Watch Post, very easy to deal with. I haven't actually played that much Hearthstone this past week, all in all, like since the nerfs, really. But from seeing other people play it and kind of watching and our expectations of it, right? The 3 health is just so much easier to deal with. So people are kind of cutting that from all the decks that were using it. So Watch Post had its time in the sun. We all knew it was going to be broken and was going to get nerfed super, super quickly. So glad everyone was on the same page and called that.
Some of us knew it more so than others, yeah. I am actually very sad, though, because I think what we've seen... the 2-3 difference versus 2-4 combined with the Sword of the Fallen nerf, right? So 3 durability to 2. So the Sword of the Fallen is still a very, very strong card, and you should be running, like, Sword of the Fallen when it makes sense to, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe that's an aggro paladin or secret paladin. You should still be running the card. The card is still busted. But because it's a little bit lower in power level and combined with the nerf to Watch Post, that aggro, death, and taxes paladin has kind of disappeared from the metagame, right? Yeah. Whether it rightfully so or not, right? It's probably still a fine deck, but it's kind of disappeared as a result of the nerfs. And so we've seen like an uptick in stuff like Dark Glare and Secret Mages coming back, which is a little bit sad. But I do think that there's still some experimentation to be had with Sword of the Fallen and just kind of like an aggro paladin build, whether it's like just pure aggro paladin or secret paladin. So I think Death and Taxes kind of has to reform a little bit. But like Call to Arms is still busted, Sword of the Fallen is still busted. Cheating out a Weblord and hiding it behind some taunts is just kind of backbreaking. I played a little bit of aggro paladin on Wednesday. And it was just so funny watching people just concede to Weblords because they didn't take into account the 2, or they couldn't play Arena, or they couldn't do anything, which was it's still a very, very good card. So I think keep an eye on something like Aggro Paladin moving forward. Is once it reforms, post Watch Post. I didn't even mean that.
Yeah, I agree. I think Paladin will be more than fine once we cut the post and things. It'll be good. Sword of the Fallen is still really, really strong, obviously.
Yeah. So let's talk about Jandice. So Jandice going from 5 to 6. So unfortunately, another card that's just getting kind of neutered because of standard. she obviously can't be running odd rogue anymore. The whole even versus odds thing. But even like a 6 mana versus 5 makes a huge difference in stuff like LPG Mage. Um, her role was like a big pile of stats to just develop a lot of tempo, and when the tempo is coming out a little bit later, it makes a very big difference. And so yeah, it's really sad. I think I haven't seen a single Jandis at 6 mana, except for when I was playing Even Mage, because then I was like, yay, nice buff, and then she like still wasn't that good in that deck. I don't know if that was because of Jandis or Even Mage, but yeah, I mean, very sad to see this, and I'm expecting this to eventually get unnerfed when she rotates, but that's a very, very long time in the future.
Yeah, I think Jandis doesn't seem very good in standard or wild right now. I think you definitely don't play her in LPG or like even Mage. As desperate as that deck is for mid-game threats, probably still not worthwhile there. So yeah, I think this would be a strong unnerved candidate, and just something to keep an eye on a year from now, basically.
Yeah, very, very, very sad to lose. Like, I just loved her in Odd Rogue, even, dude. It was...
Yeah, she's a cool card. Like,
yeah,
a lot of fun.
Stupid standard players, man. And I think maybe the biggest nerf, let's talk about Penflinger, right? So the biggest deck, that's getting nerfed because of Penflinger. First of all, thank goodness I no longer get bullied by Hearthstone cards, and I only get bullied by my Hearthstone chat now, which is nice. But Penflinger and Darkglare Warlock, I think, is the one that everybody is talking about. Again, I know you haven't played much, but what is your impressions on Penflinger's nerfs impact on Darkglare and how it's playing out?
It's hard to say. Like the Darkglare that I played, I did play a little bit of it, and it felt wrong, or it felt off. Like I don't want to say I underestimated like the impact of the Penflinger nerf, because it seems like some people are still jamming Glare and doing just fine. Like even at like very high ranks, they seem to be still winning. But the deck just felt, there was like a missing piece from it. A lot of players are starting to use like the discard builds. They're using some of those card slots that Penflinger gave up, and they're looking more at like Malcolm, Wicked Whispers, and things like that. However, I don't really tend to like that approach. So I think Darkglare will be okay, especially given things like Attack Paladin nerf, right? Like hopefully the meta probably comes a little bit more favorable. And I think like right now the easy replacement is Cult Neophyte, which is very, very strong into the mages and makes that like a much, much easier matchup. But yeah, people seem to be winning, even though the deck felt a little off to me.
Yeah, I was trying some of that Malchezaar Zimp Wicked Whispers build that you mentioned, and it felt really awkward at times, and I was just kind of missing the ability to like easy activate Flesh Giants and Darkglare and stuff like that. It did feel weird. I think one thing that's really, really funny with everybody running Cult Neophytes all over the place is in the mirror. If you play a Cult Neophyte, then your opponent can go Tamsin and 7 POs, or how much ever mana they have, because the Cult Neophyte keeps putting the PO to, not costing 0, so you keep getting it back, which is kind of a funny interaction, but also like don't play Cult Neophyte in the mirror once your opponent has the potential to do that. It's kind of funny how that kind of works out. But yeah, I mean, those are kind of the big changes. It is still pretty early, I think. It's been 4 days since the unnerfs have happened, but my initial impressions is Darkglare still good, Secret Mage still good, Miracle Mage still pretty damn good, right? It lost maybe a really bad matchup in that Tax Paladin. I know it still has some pretty bad matchups into Secret Mage and Pirate Warrior, and I think a lot of people are kind of, I don't want to say overreacting, but I've seen Cult Neophytes and freaking Secret Mages for some reason. I don't know why.
There's been a heavy response, I would say that. Like often like when these decks pop up and they become like the new hot thing, the teching does get extreme before kind of waning off a little bit.
Yeah. So like Secret Mages and honestly Secret Mages and Rena Mages are running explosives and Potion of Polys. Like he just build of that Reno Secret Mage has really taken off, at least on NA ladder. Lots of people running that secret build to counter APM Mage and have a chance against Darkglare because of Varden and Zeph and all that kind of good stuff. But then I also have still been playing like Odd Paladin. Like, dude, Odd Paladin always being slept on, but with Night of Anointment and Conviction, that deck is kind of just... It's even more busted than it's been in the past, which is kind of scary because it's been extremely busted for almost 2 years now. Odd Paladin, very, very good. And then we have to talk about Handbuff Paladin, dude. This is the new hotness. Again, shout outs to Bodybuilder who hit rank 1 last week with it. Has posted a guide, and I think that's what it took, is like him teaching people how to play the deck, because now it is at least all over NA ladder. I don't know how it is on other servers, but at least in top 200 legend, top 300 legend, people are picking up Handbuff Paladin, and it seems to be doing pretty damn well.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's like the guide or anything, but I think seeing like repeated success from multiple players is sort of enough to get momentum, right? So it wasn't just it wasn't just like Bodybuilder that hit rank 1. Give Me Kill also hit rank 1 with it. Paradox hit rank 1. I think on Asia, I believe. But yeah, multiple players are like having a ton of success with it, and you know, now that the deck has like, it just starts doing things that feel very powerful, and often that's kind of what you need, right? You need to be doing things that feel very obviously powerful for something to get picked up in Wild. And so with the amount of new tools we got, with the whole like conviction package, yeah, Handbuff Paladin definitely looking like one of the defining aggro decks of the format.
Yeah, I'm excited. I know we'll talk about this a little bit later. We'll talk about some Handbuff Paladin. So I would be very surprised that in a month's time, when they do another balance patch for Hearthstone, if stuff like Conviction and Crab Rider are not on the table for Standard, I don't know what is happening over there, because the amount of times that I like got coin Crab Ridered into Hand of a Doll into like double Conviction on turn 5 was kind of disgusting. I got burst down from 33 health, by the way, on turn 8 against a Handbuff Paladin, which is very disgusting. The deck can do some pretty dumb things. And honestly, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm at the point of like hard running Hungry Crabs in decks, because Crab Rider is kind of giving me nightmares at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Handbuff Paladin, I think I said this before at Caught On, or we said this a few weeks ago. Like, it's a fun deck until it's ever rare, right? Just like every strong deck or everything like that. It's fun while it's like, it's fun when it's an off-meta choice, and as soon as it becomes actually good, everyone starts to get a little bit frustrated with it. But that's fine. Like, decks are allowed to be strong. A Handbuff Paladin is allowed to be strong.
Yeah.
But the amount of burst that it has is sort of insane, right? Like the buffed horse riders and things like that, alongside double conviction, you are not safe at like 18 health on a like one. You leave one minion on board at 20 health on turn 5. There's a solid chance that you just die a lot of the time. It happens.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how you really like. Okay. First of all, I want to say that I'm very happy that this is finally a deck. Okay, because people have been like crapping on Handbuff Paladin for like the longest time, right? Ever since it was revealed in Gadget Sand, and so I'm happy that it's finally a deck. I am not very happy.
Allowed to be strong.
Yeah, I am not happy with Crab Rider. I don't have an issue with the Handbuff Paladin. I think Crab Rider and Conviction are a little bit overtuned, and then in combination they're kind of disgusting. But in general, I am very, very happy with the fact that it's a deck. Like, I'm very happy that it finally exists and is competitive, and people are picking it up.
Yeah, it has one of those matchup spreads where I think it's like very solid into just about everything. You see that sometimes, like previously, there have been a lot of decks that felt like this, where like Secret Mage actually is a very recent example, where it was just kind of good into almost everything in the format, and that's kind of where Handbuff is right now, where it doesn't seem to have very many hard counters outside. I know the Big Priest matchup and Q Block. Those are kind of the only ones that tend to be very harsh, but everything else is sort of okay. And I even wonder about Big Priest, whether it's actually a little bit more manageable now with the conviction of just like how much burst you can have on turn 5. Maybe that's like a little bit of a closer matchup than it has been previously.
Yeah, I will say, like, I don't want to call it savior, but like sleepers in the metagame. It does feel like Q Block is pretty damn well positioned, right? I know we've been talking a lot about Q Block with birds, right? Or I guess Control Warlock, I should say, because we're cutting cubes at this point, which is so weird. That's how fast the meta's gotten. But like with double Dirty Rats and Loatheb, and then being able to cheat out Void Lords and Dreadlords super early, it does feel pretty good. And it's okay into Dark Lair, right? If you can get out the early taunts. So it feels like that might have a chance. It does struggle into Arena Priest and Big Priest, right? So we might have some weird meta triangle going on here where you're playing key blocks to beat the Handbuff Paladins and Dark Lairs, and then you have Priest beating the key blocks, and then you've got Handbuff Paladins beating up on the Priest. So maybe that is how it ends up being in a couple weeks. But again, it's way too early to tell. And I kind of want to wrap up the segment by touching on Paladin again. Because we've been talking a lot about Paladin, I know. It's because it's gotten insane buffs, and it's an actual class again. I was doing something on my stream today where we were playing, like, what I thought were, like, the 27 best decks in the format. Right? We were just playing some deck roulette. And I was sitting there, and I was, like, before the stream started, I was, like, putting all the decks together. I was like, Demon Hunter has one deck, Druid has, like, maybe two, Hunter has one, and then I got to Paladin, and I was like, oh, I got this one and that one, and I ended up with, like, 7 decks, and I was like, damn, dude. And they were all, like, different decks. They weren't, like, different iterations of Aggro Paladin. They were all very different decks. And, dude, I am very happy for that class. And I'm excited to see, like, there is still much to refine, I think, within that class. Because, again, we just got back Call to Arms, right? I was playing some Holy Wrath Paladin, dude. That deck actually felt good. Like, it felt competitive. Yeah. It wasn't even a meme. So, I'm excited for Paladin moving forward. If it dodges some nerfs, then I think it's got some potential for being like a, up there for the priest, warlock, mage kind of levels of broken in the format.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's quite the shakeup, right? Where previously it was rogue, so it was kind of jockeying for that position. But then with the Nitro Boost nerf, and Paladin's kind of gotten some of those very similar tools, right? Like you compare Nitro Boost to something like Conviction. They feel very samey in a lot of ways. But yeah, Paladin now incredibly well positioned, yeah.
And then, do you want to talk about kind of your impressions about Forged in the Barrens compared to where you were at before the expansion dropped? Did you underestimate it? Like, it's been 3 weeks, right? We've gotten a taste of what the impact of this expansion is on the format. Did you underestimate this expansion?
Yeah, I would say yes. Absolutely. I think that in general, it's sort of, this is a recurring theme in Wild, is that you can kind of miss the forest for the trees, right? You can get like so narrowed in and focused on, doesn't beat Dark Lair, dude. Does this beat Dark Lair? Like, how are we going to beat turn 4 or 8/8s? And you kind of like miss the big picture synergy things, that everything can kind of come together very nicely, right? Like, it doesn't take much. For example, APM Mage got 1 card. And now it's APM Mage. Now it's everywhere. Now it's like popped up and is like really, really strong, and people are having a ton of success with it. And that's just 1 card. And often you kind of like don't expect that 1 card can make that big of a difference. And then you look at something like Handbuff. We knew Handbuff was going to be strong, but there were still a whole bunch of other things that have popped out, right? Like Paladin in general is a lot better than we expected. I would say in general the meta isn't as static as I would have expected. I think there's been a very large shift from prior to the release to now, and that's definitely more than I would have anticipated. And I'm hoping in the future that even if I have trouble theory crafting, even if I have trouble visualizing how everything comes together and underestimate some decks, in the future I hope that I kind of give things a little bit more credit and like give it a proper shot.
You're learning your lessons, man. You're learning your lessons. I mean, I will say, I think most of our like predictions and our theory crafts are pretty spot on, right? Except I think we missed Rakara, right? I think we both missed that one. We didn't have that one super high, but I mean, we knew. Well, you knew Watch Post was going to be broken, but we knew Sword was going to be broken. We knew Conviction was going to be broken. I didn't foresee the impact of like, okay, so yeah, Paladin's getting a ton of buffs, but I didn't think it was going to have this effect on the metagame. Like, it has completely shaken up the metagame. Right, where instead of just Dark Lair, now we have like 5 or 6 decks that I think are solid tier 1 candidates, and it's a lot more enjoyable to play. At least I don't know if the meta as a whole is in a better spot, but it's definitely a lot more enjoyable to play.
Yeah, what I mean, I guess, is like, even if our evaluations were good for the most part, we didn't seem to have too many misses here. There's like a difference between saying, oh, this card's really good, but I don't know if it'll like push the deck that much. Whereas, in this instance, a lot of these decks have been pushed. The one thing I am surprised is, I'm surprised that Murloc Shaman isn't more prevalent. That deck does seem to be good, like really good, and just doesn't see that much play right now. So that's a surprise. I thought Murloc Shaman was going to be highly, highly popular in the early going, and that really hasn't been the case.
Do you think it's because it's getting pushed out by Call to Arms, or does it have poor matchups into Secret Mage? Or
I mean, I don't think it's a deck issue in terms of power
Oh,
level.
okay.
I think it's I just think it's a perception issue. Like, I think just like Odd Paladin,
Hmm.
like it's a deck. Odd Paladin's a deck that I think is really, really good. People aren't playing it. Murloc Shaman is a deck that I think is really, really good, and people aren't playing it. And so it's easy to forget the human factor, right? Like, it's not all just about how powerful stuff is. Things have different popularity for different reasons.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. All right, so that's gonna wrap up our discussion about the metagame. Let us know what you guys are thinking about, the early post-nerf metagame for Fortune of the Variants, whether you're enjoying it or not, and what you think the most powerful decks are.
Now, next up, we're going to be switching lanes and talking about something a little bit more serious, where we're not talking about the silliness of Wild Hearthstone, but we're talking about the representation of different demographics in these Hearthstone Invitational events, specifically women. So the Hearthstone Invitational listing went out early this week, and a conversation popped up on Twitter, a lot of conversation, because out of the 20 invitees, only 2 out of the 20 were women. Now, this has been something that's been going on for a real long time now. Over a year ago, there was the Outlands Invitational, where 3 out of the 20 invites went to women. And this split is obviously very disproportionate. It's it's such a small number and it's very skewed. And so this has been an ongoing thing. And previously, when this happened a year ago, there was a ton of community response. There seemed to be an indication that, okay, they're going to be doing better next time. But we're a year later and it still hasn't happened, right? We're still having these same systematic issues. And so Meowth and I, we are never going to be able to completely understand or relate to what it is being a woman in like an esports scene, in the gaming industry. We can empathize, we can support, but we won't ever be able to completely relate to the situation. And so we would say that these conversations and these issues are incredibly important, and we would hope that they get fixed in the future. But if you really want to get really good detail on all of this kind of stuff and what it feels like and what's going on with these issues, there are a whole bunch of like videos and things like that. There's a whole bunch of Twitter threads from people like Slissa, or Gia had some. Cora talked about her experience and some of the backlashes she has faced as being a woman in the gaming industry. And so there will be links and things attached, and we would highly recommend that people check out that, because it's an incredibly important topic. Having these sorts of making sure that your invitees are incredibly diverse and come from different backgrounds is very important, because women in general are able to see other women in these kind of roles. So this kind of affirmative action is something that is incredibly beneficial, because basically if you never ever invite women to these events, you kind of lock out that portion of your potential audience. If a woman never sees another woman in any of these roles, they're gonna not be able to feel like that's something that they can achieve or something that they can do. And so it's a very short-sighted goal if you just constantly invite the same faces every single time for immediate viewership. If you don't develop these new personalities and these new faces of the scene, you really don't allow yourself to have any growth in these demographics. And so it's very short-sighted. It's been an ongoing issue now for a year. And like I said, there are obviously some systematic issues. It's not a problem for any one individual person, or at least I wouldn't expect it to be behind the scenes. But there's obviously something going very, very wrong where they are doing these invites and they're obviously not getting the invitations correct, or at least they could be doing a better job having different representation for this kind of thing. So like we said, Meowth and I are not experts on this. We're never going to be able to properly say what it's like, but we will sort of direct you guys to places where you can get a really, really good grasp of that conversation and a lot of what these people go through.
Yeah, 100% agree. We highly recommend you guys check out some of the resources. Slissa's video in particular was pretty great, actually, and I highly recommend you guys check that out. And I kind of want to get ahead of some of the comments here, because one of the most common responses that I saw from a lot of people was, you shouldn't waste invites on somebody just because they're a woman. And I kind of want to answer that and say, part of my PhD dissertation, for those of you guys that don't know me much outside of Hearthstone, I'm currently getting my doctorate right now. And part of my research is actually in STEM representation, right? When it comes to college degrees, right? Keep people in science so that more people are out there in the workforce and all that kind of stuff. But I don't want to dive too deep into that. But there is so much evidence out there of women in science, people of color in science, minorities in science, that they don't persist, right? They don't stay in science because they don't have role models, right? They don't have people, that give them self-efficacy to believe that they can do it, which is what this is, right? This is not STEM per se, but this is women and children and females and minorities in esports, and kind of showing what they can do, right? And it's not, just a boys' game. But I don't want to dive too deep into this. I highly recommend you guys check out Slissa's video. In particular, if you're going to look at one of the resources, I highly recommend you check out hers. It's a great video. So a little bit of the serious segment kind of over. Let's hop back into some Wild Hearthstone. I want to touch back onto Iksar's Q A. So he's actually been doing them on Friday nights now, so we don't get too much time to dive deep on these. But there was one response that he had to a question yesterday that I want to talk about. So the question came from Emic, who's actually kind of a friend of this of our streams and the podcast. He asked the question, do you think that Baku and Gen will become more and more annoying, as literally every odd and even card option for a specific deck, odd or even, will get strong enough and it feels like you have no restrictions at all by running either of them? And so Iksar responded, Baku and Gen decks will get better over time, but that's true for any wild deck. I actually expect them to get worse over time in comparison to other decks. Given infinite time, the only decks that will survive will be insane early game combo decks. So I want to break down Iksar's tweet into two parts, okay? First part, Baku and Gen decks will get better over time, but that is true for any wild deck. I highly expect them to get worse over time in comparison to other decks. I think this part from him is 100% correct. Yes, Baku and Gen decks will get better because they print even and odd cards, every expansion. I also think that they have been pushed out. A large, they remain competitive, but pushed out might be the wrong word. But they exist in combination with other decks, right? Like Seeker Mage, like Dark Lair, these extremely synergistic decks that do powerful things that you can't really do when you're limited by even and odd restrictions. So, I kind of agree with him wholeheartedly on the first part here. Do you as well?
Yeah, I think that the Gen and Baku will take over the format take. That was something that was very popular and something that I even sort of ascribe to in a lot of ways. And over time, we've seen a whole bunch of stuff pop up, right? Whether it's like Aggro Kingsbane is a highly synergistic deck. Secret Mage is a highly synergistic deck. Dark Lair is a highly synergistic sort of aggro deck of sorts. And it makes sense, right? Like the more resource generation players have, the more you can't afford to hero power, because hero powers are inherently pretty low tempo compared to what else you can be doing. And the tighter the game clock gets, the better these other decks are, right? Like you want things, the hero power becomes less of an upside over time in theory. And I think that's what we've seen generally play out over the past year and probably continue to.
No, I 100% agree. But I also think that like Gen and Baku decks are not going anywhere anytime soon. I don't really think that's the point of it. What Iksar is saying here, but
this is like a long-term future thing, right? This is like years down the track. This is kind of how you project, not like in the next expansion or two.
Yeah. Now let's tackle the second part of this, which I think may have rubbed a couple feathers the wrong way. Yeah. Given infinite time, the only decks that will survive will be insane early game combo decks. I'm going to go ahead and say that he probably could have worded this a little bit better, right, to avoid some of the kind of shock factor. We are seeing kind of the decks that show up as quote-unquote problematic for the format, right, are these, insane early game combo decks, right? Snip Snap, Warlock, Dark Lair, Quest Mage, right? And they have had to be swiftly nerfed. Or not so swiftly nerfed, maybe. I think that Hearthstone, because they, have this digital format, can avoid taking that route, personally. Mm-hmm. I think, yes, over time the formats are going to get faster, they're going to get more refined. But I don't think you necessarily have to let it get to the point where all you can play is early game combo decks. And I'm going to say that because there are a couple cards that are kind of at the core of some of these problematic decks. And I don't want to feel like I'm preaching to the choir, but it's like the stuff that allows you to cheat 20, 30 mana as early as turn 3, turn 4. Right? Stuff like Mech Warper, stuff like Cantertheth, stuff like Sork's Apprentice, stuff like Incanter's Flow. the cards that allow you to do that are always the things that people complain about the most, right? So, for example, let's say hypothetically that Blizzard decides that APM Mage is a problem. Hypothetically, right? And then they try to go after Flamewaker instead of Sork Apprentice. Right? Like, I think there's this, if you hit the Sork Apprentice, then you potentially cut off that abuse, right? If you cut off the Flamewaker, then they just go to Mizaki or some other, alternate win route. And so I don't think that the format necessarily has to go to this only insane early game combo decks. And I think that they can intervene and kind of prevent it from going that way. I don't know if you have a different opinion.
Yeah, I do. I'm gonna push back a little bit on
Okay.
that. I think that when he's saying we have infinite time, right? It's an inevitability that this is what decks will be. Decks will be Snip Snap. Decks will be Dark Led. Decks will be APM Mage. This is like the end game, right? And the thing is, given infinite time is sort of that's the condition that he's sort of setting there, right? Like that's the minimum that he's setting. And it makes a lot of sense because you can't nerf everything. I mean, at least that doesn't really vibe with their current philosophy, right? So it's like, given the current philosophy, given what they do, given how often nerfs happen in Wild, this is an inevitability because you can't nerf, like, are you really going to hit probably the 30, 40 cards that enable this kind of potential, especially when they keep printing more of them? Like, cards like Incantus Flow are going to keep getting printed. And so this sort of mana cheating and early game swing, there's bound to be eventually synergies that just like new synergies that pop up that aren't just things like Apprentice, that aren't just things like Mech Warper, that aren't just things like Canrathad. And so it is an inevitability that decks get faster and faster. This is something that you've seen in Wild since it started, is that the format has constantly gotten quicker. And well, this is true for like aggro decks, right? Aggro decks have gotten fast, but all the combo decks are faster. Quest Mage now is too slow by 2 turns. Where will be a year or two from now? And I think that this is sort of the thing that you kind of have to accept. In the short term, nerfs are certainly helpful, I think. Like, I would like to see more nerfs in the short term. But I think in the long term, this is what Wild is always destined to become.
But, like, I want to push back against your pushback. I don't think it's nerfing 30 or 40 cards, right, to prevent that.
Yeah.
I think it's a list of, like, 6 or 7, right?
Mm-hmm. But there is that condition, infinite time.
Yeah, I mean, hypothetically, infinite time can be whatever, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, like, let's say in the next 2 years, right? In order to prevent things like Snip Snap Warlock from popping up until way down the line, I think that there are changes that you can kind of intervene with now, right? To stop them from being, like, you can print cards like Incantus Flow, but I think Incantus Flow in combination with something like Sorcerer's Apprentice is kind of what pushes it over the top, right? And Sorcerer's Apprentice has been abused multiple times before. And so that's kind of where I'm at with that, right? Same with stuff like Mech Warper. I mean, Bloodbloom has been something that, like, we knew it was going to be broken, right? We knew it was going to be broken, and then they went and broke it with Darkest Hour. Prismatic Lens is one of those cards. It's going to be, Lightest Hour will become more consistent at one point, and it's going to be the card that eventually gets nerfed, right? Once that deck becomes a thing and we complain about it loud enough. And so I think that there are cards that you can interfere with now to prevent them from being things until way down the line, right? I think there's powerful cards, and then there's, like, enablers for those stupid broken mana cheating. And I don't think that it's 30. I mean, I guess it always depends on, like, where we're drawing the line with stupid broken mana cheating, and that's, a conversation for a different day, maybe. But I do think that there are... If I had my way, I would say, hey, here's a list of, like, 7 or 8 cards. If you nerf these, hyper aggro combo that nobody enjoys, and, like, what people claim makes the format worse, right? Whether they're right or not wrong, right? We'll ignore that part, but it'll prevent those potentially from being a thing for at least another, like, 3 or 4 years until they print some broken mana cheating card, right? But yeah, I mean, that's just my take. I don't know if you want to respond to that.
No, I mean, I don't really disagree with what you're saying. I guess I just disagree on the scope. I'm interpreting the question much more long-term probably than you are, where you're thinking more within the next couple of years range. I'm thinking... I mean, I think Hearthstone will be a game for a very long time. Like, a very popular game for a very long time. I really don't see it losing its hold as sort of the number one sort of online card game. And I think every step that they've made in terms of like the core set and introducing these new game modes and like making Hearthstone sort of a launcher for some of these different games that you can play, like Battlegrounds. I think the game will be around for a very, very long time. And so for me, it really is projecting many years sort of beyond what you're saying, I think.
I really do hope that it is. But I also, like, I think I'm at the point where, like, I would be very happy with that end game coming 10 or 15 years down the line rather than, 3 or 4 years down the line, And I think that's maybe where I'm at a little bit. Just push the terribleness down the road, right? We'll deal with it when we get to it, but just keep kicking it down the road so that we never have to deal with it.
But I like the broken combo decks.
I know you do, but everybody else on Twitter and Reddit don't, okay?
Oh, well.
They matter more than you, Corbett, all right?
Yeah, I know. I see. It's okay.
But yeah, you guys down in the comments, let us know about your responses to Iksar's tweet. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Whose side are you on? Team Meowth, Team Corbett? Let us know down in the comments below. All right, and to wrap up today's episode, we're gonna hit back a classic, something that we haven't done in a long, long time. Let's talk about our decks of the week. So our decks of the week segment. So what we usually do here is we talk about some meta and off-meta decks that we've been playing, in the past week or so. So whether you're trying to hit Legend, you're trying to grind for high ranks, you're just trying to have a little bit of fun at the rank 4, hopefully we have a deck for you. So today we're going to start off with the one, the only, the Miracle Mage, or Scam Mage, or APM Mage, whatever name you want to go with. We're going to let Corbett take the floor with this one because he hit rank 1 Legend. He's not going to brag, so I'm going to do it for him. Hit rank 1 Legend on an NA and EU with this deck. So dude, tell us the secrets. How broken is this deck?
I don't know. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's so hard to judge because I know a lot of people have been struggling with it, and it is a hard deck to pick up, right? Like it's challenging if you're not used to it. Even some very good players, I've been watching some streams and stuff, and they have been having a little bit of a rough time with it.
Thank you for not naming names, by the way.
yeah, I got you. Fortunately, there will be a guide coming out very shortly, so on someone's YouTube channel, so keep an eye out for that. But yes, APM Scam Mage. You guys probably all know what this does. We play Incantus Flow, we play Flame Waker, and then we kill the opponent by playing a whole bunch of spells. The deck is very draw heavy and can pop off as early as kind of turn 4. Ideally more like turn 5 or turn 6. The deck has weaknesses to interaction, which sounds funny, but it's kind of genuine, right? Like it's weak to things that are very disruptive. So things like secrets or explosive runes, Potion of Poly in Mage, or Pressure Plate and Snipe in Hunter. It's also weak to, Loathab. Loathab is a great way to shut down a deck that is 25 spell cards and 5 minions. So anything that sort of like is looking to interact and stop the opponent from doing stuff, this has a weakness to that. Everything else, pretty cruisy for the most part. Pretty cruisy. You can handle whatever. You can scam your way out of anything. But yeah, this deck requires a ton of APM. You'll be playing a ton of cards every turn, so you just have to get used to the play pattern of that. The stronger matchups are against the slower decks, so things like Reno Lock, Reno Priest, but it has the potential to kind of go even against some of the aggro decks that aren't the fastest. So things like let's say Pirate Warrior are probably a little too quick, but much slower than that, and you're in a pretty even-ish setup. So yeah, APM Mage, ton of fun for you, terrible for the opponent. And if you don't have a card in here, we have like Evocation, for example. A lot of people have asked about that. A lot of people disenchanted it when it got nerfed, I think. If you don't have that, just run any cheap spell that you like, whether it's Arcane Missiles, Icicle, whatever you like.
I really appreciate you not naming names because I've been playing a little bit of this deck and damn, it actually is really, really hard, right?
It's really challenging. It's like it's one of the most challenging decks I think I've ever played.
Which is saying something because like original Dark Glare, original Snap Warlock, right? Original Quest Mage. Some of the most satisfying wins though have been against stuff like Secret Mage and Pirate Warrior, where like you can't rely on the Incantus Flow kind of one turn kill, and it's like just pure out tempo with Sorcerer's Apprentice and Flameworkers, which are really, really sick. With all that being said, I recant everything I said last week, and I am all aboard this deck is toxic, and let's nerf it as soon as possible because it sucks to play against, dude.
I told you were being way too nice. Like, yeah, I knew you hated it.
I just needed another 3 or 4 streams of playing against the deck to like bash my head into a wall and start hating it as well. So
nice.
I have started running like everybody has been running Cold Neophytes and Dirty Rats and Loathebs.
Yeah.
And so
yeah. Sorry, I've been going through the ringer like on ladder recently. I haven't been playing very much over the past like couple of days, and sort of took a breather. But holy crap, the amount of Miracle Mage hate on ladder right now is insane.
Yeah, it's good though. It's deserved because this deck is toxic, and I am all down for this nerf. But if you want to have some fun, like you said, it's not very fun for your opponents, but it's really fun to play. Like I felt so bad because like I would sit there against my opponent and I'm like, I'm on turn 4 and I'm like staring at my card at like hand of 7 or 8 cards. I'm like, can I kill my opponent?
Are they dead?
Are they dead? And then like and then it ends up being like play a bunch of cards in like 30 seconds and then my opponent's dead and he's like, did you really have to slow roll me for that? I'm like, dude, math is hard, you know?
Yeah.
No, but the deck can do some pretty dumb things. But yes, please nerf the deck, Blizzard. I know we were talking about these fast aggro combo decks. Yeah, let's get rid of this one. Yeah. All right, let's move on to our next deck. So I originally nominated this as like kind of the meme deck for this week, but you know it is Hunter. It is kind of naturally a meme, but I want to talk about some even Hunter. I am in love with this deck. This is like this is the best thing since sliced bread for Hunter. It's just good, dude. This is no, dude. This is better than Starving Buzzard. Frenzied Fellwing is better for Hunter than Starving Buzzard. You heard it here first. And it's not even a Hunter card. No, this is Face Hunter. It's amazing if you're queuing into stuff like Darkly Warlocks and Secret Mages and APM Mages. So the stuff that is terrorizing Wild Ladder right now, it is extremely, extremely good against stuff like Odd Paladin. I think the deck still has some refinement to happen, right? I know Corbett's a fan of the Imprisoned Felmaw and the 4-mana Piercing Shot. I'm not completely in love with them, so they're not in my list. But those are options, so there is still refinement to be had. But I think the deck is very, 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 very good and completely underrated. The secret package, I'm only running 5 secrets, so I have double Cat Trick, double Explosive, and Pack Tactics. I kind of swap between Cat Trick and Pack Tactics depending on like what I'm seeing, right? So a bunch of Priests and Warlocks, I'll do double Cat. A bunch of aggro, I'll be running double Pack Tactics. Kind of go back and forth on that. I haven't felt the need to run stuff like Pressure Plate or Snipe for stuff like APM Mage because I kind of do well enough without it.
Okay.
If you want to kind of auto-win that matchup, go for it, right? Feel free to tech it in. It'll be an auto-win matchup, basically. But yeah, I think the deck is very, 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 very good. There are 3 legendaries in the deck. 2 of them are core, so like you can cut the rifle for a 6th secret, or you can try out the piercing shots. But I mean, the big weakness of this deck is stuff like Pyreware and obviously Reno decks. Reno, the bane of every Hunter deck ever. But I know I've been talking about this deck a lot on Twitter and in Discords. And on stream, but I don't know. Have I convinced you, Corbett, to become a Hunter believer? I even brought this to our tournament, and I won with this deck. So it's not a complete garbage meme. You know, it's good. Have I convinced you?
I'm not gonna lie. The nervousness that went through me when I saw that you actually brought Hunter, I was like, oh me out. Like, is this how we're starting THL week 1? But no, easy W for me out in his debut. But no, the even Hunter in general, like, I mean, I kind of believe in it. I have a little bit of hope, mostly because like I think it does like do pretty good with the APM, especially if you tech and Snipe or Pressure Plate. Face Hunter in general is having a really good time in Standard using some of this new stuff. Now, this deck in general though doesn't look like it uses many new cards. It's only the Oasis Thrasher, right?
Yeah. So I really like.
I suppose the buffed Fellwing as well.
Yeah, the buffed Fellwing is like actually insane. 3/3 versus a 3/3 is amazing. I really like the Oasis Thrasher and Cobalt Sandtrooper synergy with Pack Tactics, just because like more face damage is always good. which is maybe why I like haven't really felt the need for stuff like Pressure Plate or Snipe, right? Or the need for like Piercing Shot, I believe is the name of the card.
Yeah.
I play this as kind of like an all-out face deck rather than like control the boardy style of aggro deck because other decks just do that better than you. So why not just lean into the face strategy better?
Right. No, it makes sense. But yeah, even Hunter seems to be. I mean, we talked about it. Like there seems to be there's a small amount of hype on it, and so yeah, I'm somewhat of a believer. The amount of off-board damage the deck has now with like a Knife Bender helps a ton. Where you don't need to be pushing through too much with minions, like you said, you're running a very faced version that has a ton of sort of you don't need board control to keep on chipping through. And so yeah, I think the rifle's also busted, and I'm a huge believer in that card. Like I love the rifle.
Yeah, I wasn't at first. I remember when it originally came out, you were super hype on it, and I was like, hey, it's a 4-mana 2/2. No, it's kind of nuts. It's really good. But yeah, I think Hunter in general, we trash talk. I will lump us both in together. We both trash talk Hunter a fair amount on our podcast because it's deservedly been, in the dumpster for a very long time. But this deck, I am pulling up my stats right now, looking at my performance with Even Hunter this season. So just in April, I am 23-8 with the deck. And then
Well, that's good.
Yeah, that's a 75% win rate.
Yeah.
So it's pretty damn good. I think the deck, and this is in Legend, High Legend as well. So I'm a believer in the deck, and you guys should be too. I'm excited about Even Hunter. So now for our last deck, we left this one for last because I think, Corbett, you have some comments about some specific builds and cards, but we want to talk about Handbuff Paladin. So we've been talking it up for months. Bodybuilder hit rank 1. It's become super popular. So the first list that you guys are going to see is the list that he's been, kind of advocating for. This is what he hit rank 1 Legend with. Kind of the main, significant standouts here. Crab Rider with Hand of a Doll and Conviction, right? Knight of Anointment. The draw engine in this deck is kind of absurd. And then the recovery potential or the board swing potential is also disgusting with stuff like Samuro and Broomsticks. And then on top of that, you kind of have the burst damage with the Chillblade Champions of the Horse Riders. So this is something that we've been talking about for a couple of weeks now. And I know, Corbett, you were thinking about talking about a little bit of a different version where the primary differences are like Saronite Chain Gangs and Overlord Runthax. So do you want to talk about kind of, first of all, the deck itself and kind of how it plays through and the strategies, and then, maybe it's not completely refined and some cards that you want to be tested?
Yeah, sure. So Handbuff Pally, it's right in the name, right? You buff your hand, you make sure that you get a whole bunch of new resources in hand. You want like Christology, First Day of School, really like two of the absolute best sort of +1 cards that we have in the format in terms of like getting extra resources. They're both insane. Like First Day of School, you were talking about Paladin Nerfs. That one's one to genuinely really keep an eye on. That card is nutty in standard. But yeah, you look to play them. You look to buff up your hand with like Smuggler's Run and Outfitter in the early game. You have a ton of recovery, as Meowth said. And then the amount of burst that you have now with the Conviction and this charge stuff that you have, it's very filthy, where the deck is very, very flexible. At least it can do a lot, right? Where it has mid-game pressure. Like you can make mid-sized minions to sort of pressure the opponent. You have tons of recovery with things like Broomstick and all this rush mechanics. Samuro is a really, really strong AoE. And you have burst damage as well. So if you ever get like kicked off board, it doesn't really matter. You have a ton of burst and a constant threat. So the deck is incredibly well-rounded. And it's so funny because of where Handbuff Paladin started back in Gadget's End, when it was basically the worst class along with Hunter. The Grimy Goons got very screwed over that set, but here they are like 4 years later, coming back on a revenge tour. So the things that I would look at though in terms of like the difference in the build and things that are worth trying. Currently the bodybuilder list here is being highly picked up. A lot of people are doing very well with it. But something that I would think about is revisiting Saronite Chain Gang. We don't have a ton of information just because of how heavily people immediately net deck bodybuilders list. And so there aren't really many variations on HS Replay or anything on these alternative cards. The early stuff that we do have, though, is really good on Saronite. So I think Saronite is probably very strong in this deck. And it makes sense to me, like, logically, why it would be strong. And so I'd look to run that perhaps over the Chillblade Champion. And I think that Runthak as well is a card worth giving a shot. But I mean, I honestly think Lothab might be better than Runthak right now in the current meta, just the way things panned out. But yeah, deck is super, super busted. It's probably, I mean, it feels like it might be the most popular or second most popular deck that I'm seeing right now when I'm queuing up. What about you?
I mean, I'm checking my stats right now. I know I've queued into a lot of Dark Glare today, but Handbuff Paladin, I think, is... but Handbuff Paladin's second most popular deck. So yeah, I mean... Yeah, lots of APM Mages, and lots of Handbuff Paladins, so alongside Dark Glare. So I think those are the three kind of big decks right now, at least on High Legend NA, right? It could obviously be varying wherever you are on ladder, or if you're on a different server, but yeah, I mean, the deck is kind of nuts. And if you guys are ever looking for a guide, we can link Bodybuilder's guide down in the description as well, so make sure you guys check that out if you want to pick up the list yourselves. But like I said, man...
what? Yeah, sorry, I just want to make one thing on the play pattern. Yeah, make sure you keep Samuru in your mulligan. I don't know if Bodybuilder's Guide mentioned that. I can't remember if it was just like keep Smugglers or keep Christology, keep Birthday, but keep the Samuru. That card in your mulligan is busted. Like the stats on that card in your opening hand are actually insane. It's the best card in your deck. Like it kind of blew me away when I saw it. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's. Literally every time I play against Handbuff Paladin, I'm like, please don't have Samuro. Please don't have Samuro. Please don't have Samuro.
Just one time. It's one time. Just please don't have it.
And then they always have it, you know. But it's kind of disgusting when you have a board full of 5/5s and 6/6s, and then they play a 4-cost card and your board is gone. And you just cry a little bit. But, I mean, all of that being said, I am very happy that Handbuff Paladin is the deck right now. Like, you know how we were like that when Token Druid got popular enough to see play on like the VS report and like you with your APM Mage? I think I feel that for people like Inman and Bodybuilder. Like this is their baby, and I'm very happy that this is seeing play because it's it was bullied for 4 years by Tanner, and now he's back. He's swole, and he's gonna out to get his revenge. You know.
Yep. Hit the gym, delete the Facebook, and hit rank 1 legend. That's how it goes.
Easy. All right, that's going to wrap it up for our decks of the week, and unfortunately that means our episode as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode, and of course, Corbett, thank you again for joining me. Let the people know where they can find you, friends.
Guys, you can find me at Corbettgames on Twitch and Twitter, and like I teased earlier, that whole APM Mage guide will be out on YouTube. You can find me at YouTube as well. Corbettgames. So thank you guys very much for tuning in, listening, watching, and hope you guys are having a good one.
Guys, I got a little bit of a sneak peek at that. I highly recommend once it comes out. Definitely check it out. You know, besides the pure educational aspect, it's a pretty great meme as well. But yeah, you guys know where to find me on YouTube, but of course, Twitch, Twitter, all that kind of good stuff. Same name, get me out. And of course, join the Discord as well. I've been selling that out. You know, gotta keep selling it out. And of course, selling out the podcast. And of course, we appreciate all of you guys that tune in week after week, whether that's on YouTube or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We really do appreciate you guys tuning in and listening to us two idiots talk about the WoW format. We really do appreciate you guys. We hope you guys are having a good week. Enjoy the WoW expansion, and we will see you guys next time. Later.